over the top of my right shoulder, there was this loud, very loud, I don't know what you call it, heavy, big wolf, half elephant type of thing. Well, I'm Brendan Brown. I am the founder and director of the Catskill Appalachian Research Collective, otherwise known as the CARC. I have always been, like most people, I've always been kind of fascinated with I'm almost 50 now, so I've got into the Leonard Nimoy In Search Of and the old creepy Monster Quest, the original series. And you have to be kind of dumb and blind not to be fascinated by the unknown, but I never really pursued it because I was too busy, having a career and traveling. I used to work in the music industry. So I worked in the music industry for 20 years. I grew up on the East Coast where I am now, and then I moved out on the West Coast, and I lived in California and then the Pacific Northwest. And then I moved home, and I got injured, and I had to have surgery. So I kind of started watching a lot of content. You're laid in bed and you watch a lot of content, and I started watching more and more Bigfoot videos and somehow that got into my stream. And I'm like, you know what? And I've always been I'm a filmmaker now, I edit videos for a living. So it's in my wheelhouse to kind of want to tell a story. So I was like, I saw this group, and I'm like, maybe I can follow these people around and kind of not film the search for Bigfoot, but search the people and record and chronicle the people that are interested in looking for Bigfoot. I always found that fascinating. And one thing led to another. I ended up starting the group. I remember having one member in the Facebook group and not having a YouTube channel, because our YouTube channel is really only maybe a year and a half old. It's fairly new, because we just didn't have any content. And so I met these guys that I was going to film, and got it all set. I had all my stuff, and then suddenly the leader went into rehab, right? So he's not able to do anything. But I met these other guys. I met Charlie, who's in the group now. He does the podcasts on the show. I'm sorry, the conference spotlights on our show, and Mike Lucci and this other guy, Sean Wagner. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to go out and start looking for Bigfoot. Why not, right? So we went out, and you know what? To be honest with you, a lot of people have been looking for Bigfoot for very long periods of time without absolutely any evidence. And we kind of stumbled into something real quick. It was maybe the third or fourth trip. We were up in the Allegheny National Forest and I live in New York, so we're up in the southern tier, which is up towards Lake Erie that way, up past Binghamton. And we rented an Airbnb, and we were there for a week. And it was this time, I think 2 or 3 years ago, actually. It was the first week of October, so it was close to this time. And we had gotten out, and we'd gone out, and we were listening, and you go out in the woods and you do this and stuff like that. And so I became fascinated that way. I don't know if you want me to get too far down the road with the stories about what happened, but so that's how I got into it.
Go ahead and just give us the details of what happened up there at that Airbnb.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've watched any of my content. I don't know if you have, but I'm very skeptical. But I'm an open-minded skeptic. I'm not one of those people that wear blinders and expect everybody to present pristine evidence. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut. So we went on a couple of expeditions, but we were up there. So we rented the Airbnb. It was right on the edge of the Allegheny National Forest. So it was a beautiful location. We were just across the Pennsylvania border. And we originally had planned, Mike Lucci, he's kind of the Bigfoot leader of our group. He kind of knows the most about the research. And he's also the youngest, so he can really kind of get up in the woods. So it was him, it was Mike, it was our young friend Derek, and it was me and Sean at the time. And Sean, so there's 4 of us. And I'm one of those guys, you look at the map and you go, how far can we get away from the nearest source of contamination, right? How far can we get away from the smallest town? How far can we get away from the ranger stations? So we took an old fire road, and I'm talking this is an old beat up fire road that led right through the middle of the national forest, which is not far from the Kinzu Dam, which is about maybe 6 or 7 miles east of the Kinzu Dam. So we're literally in the middle of nowhere, and the rain it's starting to fog up, and it's getting ready to rain, because we'd almost hit dozens of deer on the way in there, because there's this little county road that goes through there, and it was quite foggy. So the deer were out, and the deer were moving because the storm was coming in. So we dropped off Mike and Derek at a much farther location, and Sean and I drove about 3 or 4 miles away and parked up. And then Sean, we were doing call blasting and kind of listening and call blasting. And so every time Sean would do a call blast, and we actually have this on video. The whole thing is chronicled, which is great because if you don't capture it on anything, it's just a story. So it's midnight, right? It's 1 o'clock. We're doing call blasting. The rain is starting to slowly begin to rain. It's more and more. It's 2 o'clock. Starting to get tired. Starting to get a little bit. Okay, nothing's happening. So I put the camera down for one time. Right, one time. And luckily we had digital recorders on top of the truck recording, and so Sean does a call blast, and I tell you what, and I hunt, right? And I'm a skeptic. I tell you what, Linda, I would say maybe 75 to 100, maybe 100 yards at most over the top of my right shoulder at the time, there was this loud, very loud, I don't know what you call it. I honestly don't know what you call it. It was more of like almost like a heavy, big wolf, half elephant type of thing. It was just much stranger than I ever pictured happening. And I'm a big guy. I'm almost 6'3". I'm 300 pounds. So I really don't get too concerned about things bothering me in the woods because I kind of grew up in the woods as a kid. But I tell you what, that shifted the needle. It really did. So we have this loud howl comes, and it's the only time I didn't record it. So I pick up my camera, and you can hear this whole thing play out on the digital recorders. And so this giant, whatever it was over my shoulder, and it started calling, and it called more and more. And then maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, down into this little hollow, there was another one that started calling back. And I'm telling you, it wasn't, I know people are like, it was coyote, it was this. I'm telling you, it wasn't. And so the two things were calling to each other for a while, and the rain was coming down. And then so they were kind of tracking one another. I don't know what they were doing. But so like we were kind of in the middle. So we were on a fire road. One's here and then one's over here. And you can hear them moving. And then you suddenly hear about 20 minutes goes by, and then you hear coyotes start to chase. And so I think they were, whatever they were, they were obviously tracking or hunting something because they were calling back and forth to each other. And thank God we had all this captured on the digital cameras or the digital recorders. And then I picked up my camera and recorded the whole thing. Because otherwise it's just a story. So that's how it started, and kind of after that, I was kind of like, okay, I'm not a believer, but I kind of think there's a little bit more going on to this whole Bigfoot story than originally planned, and so that kind of started the whole group pushing into fast gear. So that's how we got moving on that, and I was lucky because I'm telling you, that was maybe 3 or 4 months into my whole Bigfoot career, and I'd already had this happen, so it was kind of cool, good way to get things started.
So what year was that? When was that?
That was 2020. Yeah.
2020. So everything that's happened really in the last 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, I did not start doing any of this stuff until 2019. I had my surgery in 2019, and I kind of, and I'm one of those guys, if I'm going to do things, I want to try to do them right. So we're going to chronicle things. We're going to get a group together. We're going to create evidence. We're going to, and that led to, we did a From Behind Tall Trees, which was our first foray into doing what you're doing, right? The long form interviews. And they're not easy to do because you have to find engaging guests, and you don't always get the engaging guests.
Yeah, tell me about it. So let's go back to this experience. So you're out there in the woods. You're obviously created a remote situation for yourself. You got 2 guys off. Do you think that the fact that you were in their territory had anything to do with them calling to one another?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not one of those people that can tell you exactly what I think Bigfoot do when they do what they do, right? But I think the storm had something to play with it, because the weather was and the storm was coming from the west, right? Because this is October, so it's kind of a cold, slow, maybe not a freezing rain, but it was cold. It was in the low 40s. I think they were hunting. I really do think they were hunting, because like I said, when we pulled in that night, we literally almost hit several deer crossing the county road before we got into the fire road. They were all over the place. So, with the humidity, with the barometer dropping or whatever it does before a storm, and the barometric pressure changing, I think a lot of animals move and a lot of animals hunt right before it gets bad weather.
So there was no indication really that you had any bearing on that. It was more you just got in the way of their hunt.
I honestly think they obviously knew we were there, right? Because you'd have to be an idiot not to hear a truck on a fire road, right? I mean, these things live in the woods, right? So they're in tune with their environment. But I think they didn't care whether we were there. They honestly didn't care because they paid little no attention to them because they moved. And we were trying to figure out where the one was because there was a track of a lumber, like a logging track was just above us, right? So the fire road is, we're sitting on the fire road. The truck is facing east. The hill is to the south, right? And that's down farther into the park. And that's where the first sound came. And then there was a swampy hollow down on the north side. So I think they were tracking, if they were tracking deer or whatever they were doing, but they were honestly calling to each other. And I was, I tell you what, I really didn't put a whole lot of, I'll be honest with you, Lynn, I didn't really put a whole lot of credibility into like, okay, what's going on with these things until that night. Because I was like, you know, you have to, I'm one of those people, I have to see it or I have to hear it to believe it. And so what we did is we got all excited, right? But I'm not one of those people that sends things out, puts it on the internet, right? Because once you put it on the internet, it's there, it's gone, right? You don't own it anymore. People just take it and they can tell you whatever they think of it. So made phone calls, called the DNC or the DNR, whatever they are in the Fish and Game in Pennsylvania. Sent them the tape, had it cleaned up, sent it to David Ellis, as you know, from the Olympic Project, who luckily I got introduced to through Julie Wrench, who's a lovely, fascinating woman who can tell you everything you need to know about strange sounds because she lives down in the Uwharrie and she has some amazing audio. So I sent it to her. She sent it to David, and David got back to me and cleaned it up. And he says, "Listen, this is the same exact stuff I hear on the West Coast in the Pacific Northwest. So you definitely have something. Whatever you captured is not anything that is regular, like it's normal, right? It's not a wolf, it's not a bear, it's not an elk, it's not a deer, it's not coyotes. And the coyotes came in later. We could definitely hear the coyotes later." So once we got that back from David, we were kind of excited. I'm like, wow, we really did stumble across something. And so what's funny about that is, you know, it was really, and if you listen to the audio, and I can send it to you, you hear the rain hitting and it's very contaminated because you hear the rain and the leaves and the wind. The next night, it was perfect. Like the storm had gone through. And I'm like, oh, we're going to go back there. We're going to go back there. And it was a crystal clear, cool night where you could hear for miles. And I tell you what, Linda, nothing. You could hear a pin drop. It was so frustrating because like now we are in the position to really get this stuff audioed, right? To really get it chronicled, and literally nothing. It's just nothing. So it's a little frustrating.
Yes, they simply weren't there hunting. Have you gone back to that location since?
No, we haven't. We've been a lot over. We've been busy it's hard because you gotta have day jobs, and then these trips cost money, right? So you know, because you got gas and food and stuff like that, and taking the time off work and getting everybody together. So we haven't gone back there, but we have gone to. So we've hit central Pennsylvania pretty heavy because we have a couple of people that live down there, and we've had some interesting stuff there. And then we also got busy doing I don't know if you follow the missing 411 stuff, but there's a Thomas Messick went missing not far from my house, a couple hours north. So last year we were shooting a whole documentary on that. So you can only be in one place at one time, unfortunately. So we haven't got a chance to get back there yet, but it's definitely on our list to get back up there. And hopefully maybe later this year, we're going to get back up there. But we've had some good luck in central Pennsylvania as well, too.
Well, what all have you found in central Pennsylvania that you can tell me about?
Sure. Well, Gwen Purcell is one of our members, and Sean Wagner. They live down just, I think, by Catawissa is the forest down there. And so that's another one of those things where we look at the map and we go, okay, there's activity here, and it's a lot of activity, but it's not as big as the Allegheny National Forest. It's more condensed. It's more of a game land. And if you know anything about Pennsylvania game lands, they're big, but they're not that big. And they're kind of blocked in by highways and freeways and stuff like that and county roads. And so we got together, we went down to Gwen's house. Gwen has had several sightings by her house, or she's had one very good Class A sighting. So I figured, okay, let's go down there. So we went down there and I interviewed her prior to it. So I set up the cameras. We did a full 2-hour interview about her story down there. And then we go, okay, let's go into the woods. Here we go, right? So same story. We find the fire road, but this is more of a smaller fire road. So you're passing little houses on the way in, right? Little pieces of private property. And there's 5 or 6 of us in 3 or 4 vehicles. No, maybe about 8 people in about 4 vehicles. So what we did is we dropped off, we stopped one truck here, and then we drove another half mile, dropped another. So we had almost like a line of vehicles, and everybody had tape recorders and stuff like that. And so we get in there, and so Mike Lucci and I are the farthest ones in, because of course I want to be as far in as you can get. I don't want to be the guy that's in the deepest. Excuse me. And it's funny because so we had a line of vehicles, and they're about a half a mile apart, right? So everybody stops and parks and listens. So we figured we could spread it out. We literally parked the truck and shut the door and turned things on, and we had a huge howl over our shoulder. And it was a little bit farther off, but we got upset because we thought people were already starting to call blast. We're like, who? And you could hear it on the radio. We're like, who's making noise already? This is ridiculous. We just got here. And I tell you what, Linda, the same thing. It was just a howl in the distance, and it was a loud one, and it was captured again. And it's like, man, so these things. This was a little bit more weird though, because when this happened, there was the second group in saw these lights in the trees, and they thought it was for some reason they thought it was our flashlights. They're like, who's shining these flashlights? So there was these strange orbs that are captured on camera that are happening the same time this howl was happening. And you could see them. You could see everybody looking for these lights, and they're calling on the radio, going, "Who's using their flashlight?" And we use red lenses on our flashlights, so it was a bright white globe or orb up in this tree, about 40 feet up in this pine tree, and it kind of hovered, and then it kind of hovered and kind of went up and disappeared. And it's just, I tell you, I am a firm believer that if these things, and I believe these things exist, obviously because I heard them, or there's something going on, and I trust a good amount of the stories that I've heard because I've heard a lot of stories like you. You listen to people talk, but I think you'd have to be naive to still think that this is just merely a flesh and blood creature, because there's just way more to this thing. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more evidence.
Well, I agree there, and certainly the orbs, and on occasion even UFO craft are also reported. There's a strange reality going on here that I'm not sure we totally understand. What has been your experience in the interviews that you've done? And obviously you've seen the orbs. I have. What do you think this is? And I know you're not going to be able to give me a definite answer, but you have.
I would love to, right? I would love to.
Right.
Well, beyond, and it's funny. It's what's frustrating is, and because I've kind of, and if we have our show This Week in Bigfoot, and if you watch it, it's a weekly newscast. We kind of endear ourselves with the skeptics and the believers alike. We kind of play right down the middle, and I think that's how you have to. But what's unfortunate about, and this is unfortunate about the skeptical community and what we call the apers, right? The flesh and blood people. I'm sure they don't like that term, but that's what you get when you call people woo paranormal. Is unfortunately when you admit that you think that there's something more to this than just flesh and blood, they immediately push you off the deep end and think that you're seeing Bigfoot coming off a spaceship every 5 minutes, right? So for them, there's no middle ground. There's no just left of center. It's either all or nothing, which is unfortunate. But I've heard stories. Mike Merchant, who's a good friend of mine who does the show with us, has seen. He's like it, almost like the creature was too big to come from behind the tree it came from behind, right? And along with the orbs. So there's a lot of weird. So like if you picture like those old cartoons where like the big whatever, it comes from a tiny little tree, it goes behind it and it just disappears, right? Almost to that effect, but not as grandiose as that. So I've heard people, I know people have seen the cloaking before, and a lot of the orbs. So I'm not sure if you've ever spoken with Mike Quast about what he has going up in Minnesota, but there's a gentleman up there, Randy, who has property. Who has been, the property has been very, very well documented, very well investigated, and there are signs of there's some sort of cloaking and some sort of portal thing going on, and I know that when I say that out loud, I can hear myself saying it, and it sounds insane, but there has to be something going on, because I think they're here when they're here, and they're in this plane, right? So when they come. Wherever they come from, whether they're interdimensional or time travelers or from another planet, wherever they come from, I think they're physically here when they're here, right? So they're physically here when they're here. That's why they leave tracks. That's why they leave sign. But when they're gone, I think they're able to just kind of snap out. Like I'm sure you've there's a very well documented. I forget now, this escapes the name of it. The name of her escapes me. But do you remember he's the optical physicist whose wife went deer hunting, and she saw the creature in the tree kind of bounce between the trees. It was in the end of the Missing 411 Hunters documentary.
I don't know the name, but I trust that you do. So.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's what I'm trying to get at is, so this lady was deer hunting, she was bow hunting, and she was in a tree stand, and there's a marching band playing on the football field about 2 miles away. And at the same time, the marching band sees this huge light UFO above the marching field, above the playing field. This creature is kind of a shadowy, cloaky thing going from tree to tree right in front of her. It's almost like, and it's not predator, it's not any of that stuff, but it's almost like a translucent type of, you can see a little bit of an outline. So I think that's how they come and go as they please. I know that doesn't make a lot of people happy, and I really don't care, but I honestly believe that that's what it is. And otherwise we would have a lot more evidence, right? I think we get lucky. I think people get lucky and get glimpses of them and have these stories. But also, I mean, that's the same thing we're looking at right now with this whole, and that's why, we report a lot on this UAP phenomenon, because that is the same problem the government is having with their sensors, right? Their cameras, their thermals, all their sensors, their arming, their weapons, they don't work when they're close to these UAPs. And I think whatever these Bigfoot creatures are, I think they have the ability to do the same thing to us with our technology.
Well, I think that very well might be. And I interviewed someone the other day that talked about the use of a thermal, and there were two men walking across a field, and they could see a box in the middle of the field through the thermal. They couldn't see it physically with their eyes, but they could see it. They could see something in the middle of the field. The two men walked through there, not seeing it at all, but they walked into this box and they became invisible through the thermal, where they could see them completely. When they walked on the other side of the box, they could see them again through the thermal. So it's like this, when we talk about portals, I'm not sure we totally understand that we may be going in and out of portals as well and not even realize it. The men did not know they were inside the box, did not know that they were invisible to the thermal. But what happened was they felt odd when they were in there. There was an odd sensation, but they couldn't really tell you that that's where they were. So I think there's also that potential that we're not really giving credit to, that we may be going in and out of spaces that we don't realize we're going in and out of.
I think, I mean, nature is wondrous, and nature is confusing. And I think this is some sort of I agree with you that they probably felt like a static electricity, like a static kind of a weird feeling. And I believe that there are certain areas that happens to people, and they either, I mean, look at and it's strange because you look at the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that go missing each year, right? And I'm not going to tie that into this whole thing here, because I know that's a whole different rabbit hole. But I think that also might play into some of this, right? Might play into some of this. I mean, most people, a lot of it's accidents, but I think the creatures can come and go through these portals, and there is a lot more to the story that a lot of people are willing to admit, right? So that's why I think these flesh and blood people, and I'm not, again, I'm not the professor on any of this, and I don't pretend to be, but I think those people tend to want to kind of live a little bit in denial on this, because they want to play it safe, and they want to just admit what they want to admit and say it's just a big monkey in the woods. And I don't, in this day and age in 2023, I think we probably would have had a lot more evidence by now if they were just simple creatures like that. Yeah.
Well, I think so. I think there would be a lot more evidence, and it would be a lot more, probably well received as well if they were just flesh and blood creatures in the woods, which they still may be. I mean, I don't know. I only know.
True. Yeah.
And all we have really are personal experiences out there, and people have different experiences. So we just have to go with that. So when you're out there researching, do you find footprints, structures, any kind of other physical evidence?
Well, we found a couple of footprints, nothing castable, but I mean, it's very hard for me to take into account a lot of the tree structures. I've just seen so much wind and so much damage that I can't. I got to kind of, if I see an X in the trees, or if I see some trees wrapped around another tree, I kind of got to have to just. I kind of put that at a distance. I really haven't. I guess the short answer is no. No luck. No, yeah. I mean, that's the short answer is no. It's just we haven't had we haven't been lucky enough. I've run across some people that have had some amazing tracks, and these things have been in, and I've interviewed these people, and I've seen the footage, and I've watched the videos. And I tell you, I think you just have to be lucky. I mean, hearing a creature is one thing, but running across the trackway, because trackways, as you know, with weather and deterioration of soil, things don't last very long. So I think you have to be it's almost like winning the lotto to not only find a trackway, but find a castable one, or a castable print and a good trackway. And we just haven't had that luck yet. But I've only been doing it for a couple of years, so who knows?
Yeah, I think you've been real lucky to have found what you have found. So are there any other research trips that you've taken, or areas that you can tell me about?
Well, we do. Like I said, we were up in, we spent all last fall up in Warren County, which is upstate New York. And that's pretty much the Bigfoot capital of New York. And that we were up there filming the documentary for the Tom Messick case. And we did, it was hard because we were filming during the day. And then some of the groups wanted to go out at night, and it's just really hard to shoot during the day and then film all night, and then shoot during the day and film all night. You just can't do that. You can't keep it the price. But it's amazing enough up there. You would think that you would get a lot of activity up there, and there was literally nothing. So it's hard because I know Mike Lucci, who's one of our guys, has had some good luck in Vermont and the New Hampshire area. And I'm trying to get up there now. Now is getting to be the good weather, right? So now as it's starting to cool down, because it's been a very wet, hot summer here, and it's just not conducive to doing a lot of outdoor activity, especially when you don't feel like being covered in sweat all the time. But no, nothing outside those two right there. It's hard because doing the show now is hard. Doing the weekly news show is really hard because that's a lot of work. You can't really step away too long, because you got to have the show edited, you got to have the show up and running by Friday.
Right, exactly. That's a commitment to get out and research as well.
Yeah, so it's hard.
Of your group that goes out, and really, do each of them have their own skill, their own talent? Do they bring different things to the table?
I would say that, well, I've always found, and I'm a firm believer that I think there should be more women involved in this whole field, because I think women bring a certain sensitivity and a certain they're just more perceptive. And I think Gwen Purcell, who I would love to get in touch with, would make an excellent guest. Is the one. She's had a lot of activity around her house, but she's also had a lot of paranormal activity near her house. So, but she seems to be more receptive to things. Seem to happen more when Gwen's with us, which I don't know. I don't know if I can attest it to her being a woman or just being lucky, but she can sit and she can kind of tune in and kind of bring things to her, right? So if nothing's happening and we bring Gwen into the situation, like we brought her into that state game land with us, as soon as we're on that property, things were happening with the calling and then the lights and stuff like that. And a lot of that stuff happens with her house. Now, Sean is more of the paranormal, but he's also the guy that kind of call blasts and brings the technology into the stuff and making the noise. Mike Lucci and Derek are the young guys, so they can actually get out and go up far into the woods, right? Because they're like 30. So, we can't all run around I wish I could run around like I was 30, but we can't. So, but I'm a firm believer that you have to just kind of sit in there and wait. I don't believe in getting in and making a whole lot of noise. I think we were lucky with the call blasting the first time in the Allegheny National Forest. I don't think the call blasting literally had anything to do with it. I think they were calling to themselves and we just got in the way. I don't know. I have a hard time believing that Bigfoot carries sticks around, right, for these wood knocking things. I think if they're doing it, it's more like an ape thing with their chest or with their lungs. I don't think it's they're carrying wood knocking, carrying a stick. But I think like I said, we're a young group. We have a long way to go. But we'd like to get one on. I'd like to get it on camera. To be honest with you, I'd like to get a good photo of something on camera, because I tell you what, Linda, if I saw one, right, I wouldn't shut up about it. You couldn't shut me up about it. I tell everybody.
Yeah, a visual is an important part, but you've heard more the sounds. You probably heard the Sierra sounds. Would you say that there was a language going on between them?
With the ones that we had, they were more like calling, like long distance, long calling to each other, like a big like almost like an elephant call and a wolf. It's really hard to explain unless you hear it. And but I think with the Sierra sounds, that is a very tricky situation, because a lot of people have claimed to have heard it before, heard it since. I mean, they would have to have a language, right? They would have to have a language. And I've heard more than one story from people saying that they've heard these things, they saw these two things arguing with each other, right? There's a very famous Sasquatch Chronicles episode with this British lady on the beach, and the two were arguing with each other, and they were completely oblivious to her there. I've never interviewed anybody personally that has heard them speaking. I think you have to be, not only are you talking about seeing one, right? You're talking about seeing more than one, and then having them communicate around you. Again, this is all about winning the lottery with this stuff. So, plus, living on the East Coast is a little bit tricky for us, because while there is vast amounts of forest, it's just there's more farmland in between. So you don't have as big a tracks as you do out in the Pacific Northwest, which is unfortunate. But I mean, if they're in the Pacific Northwest, which I believe they are, I believe they're not just they're on the East Coast as well. They're just probably fewer and more far between. But I do think, I mean, they have to communicate somehow, so they must have a language.
I interviewed someone who accidentally was out hunting, and they ran into one of them that seemed to have almost like a sign language that it was using with this man. Have you heard of that?
No, it's funny that you mentioned the hunters thing, as I just did a piece for this week's show, that I believe that hunters are probably the more, in my mind, again, this is in my own opinion, are probably the more credible of the witnesses that I've talked to, because I think the sheer timing of how hunters work, right? So hunters generally go into the woods about an hour before sunup. Right? You get situated, you get set up, and they're there all day. They sit quietly, whether they're in a deer stand or whatever. And so they sit there all day, and then they also leave about an hour, hour past sundown, unless they get a deer. So they're on the same schedule. And I believe these things are nocturnal hunters. So they have the chance of passing through them or running into one. Right. So I don't give much. I guess I could say I never really understood why people feel the need to go out and look for the thing at night, even though we did. Is I think that has a lot to say for people watching maybe a little bit too much television, because it's a little creepier at night. So maybe, with Finding Bigfoot and with Expedition Bigfoot, they're always going out at night. I think if you really want to, and I've been lobbying with this for my group, and unsuccessfully, unfortunately, because I don't think people like to get up early, is to do it and to do the investigations more during hunting hours. So you go out at like 4 or 5 in the morning, you stay till 9:30 in the morning, then you go back 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and you stay till 8:30 at night. I think I really want to try that theory, because I think we'd have much more luck. But as far as the sign language goes, you mean the beast was communicating with the man?
Yeah, there was some gestures with the hands that tended to indicate something. I'm not sure if he knew exactly what, but the hand palms out, like a reaching out, then the palms down, and then pointing to himself, and then pointing away from him, like as if there was an attempt to form some kind of communication between the two of them. He wasn't sure what it meant, but he honestly felt like it had to do with, they were hunting, the Bigfoot was hunting, and there were deer close by, and there were other Bigfoot around. So he felt like there was something that he was telling this man. This man also had a gun. He was out hunting. So there was some communication that was taking place, but he didn't feel threatened by them. And then, he just stood still, and they went on and got the deer that was there. The Bigfoot got the deer, and then they separated and went their own ways. But I had never heard of that kind of sign language sort of thing happening.
No, I tell you what, that would be fascinating to hear that story firsthand, and then to also witness that, because you would have to wonder if why the creature was using gestures that we were familiar with. Right. So is it mimicking what they saw other people do as far as other hunters do? Because obviously it seems like the hunter kind of understood what he was trying to get at, like talk to him about or communicate with him about.
It was. These were very very common gestures that we might have with one another to give some kind of an indication. I mean, I'd never heard of a Bigfoot doing that before,
No,
but it was very
I.
interesting. But I think you're right on, a lot of hunts are at night, and I have to agree that most or a huge number of the experiences that I hear about are hunters and fishermen that are out there alone, or maybe just very few people, very quiet. They're tracking a deer, or they're out there, looking for something, and just happenstance is they run into a Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot's often as surprised as they are that they're in their territory.
Yeah, I mean, there's one story I heard from a guy, and this is it's kind of an amazing story. Is he was on his quad, right, and he was going to his hunting spot, and the guy had hunted, and I'm going to leave his name out because it's just not important. But he was heading to his hunting spot, and this guy was in his, I think he was probably late 30s at the time. He had grown up in the woods, and this is not far from here. This is not far from where I live, and I haven't told too many people the story because the gentleman asked me not to. He was riding. His family owns about 75 acres of farmland, and they've got a large tract of trees in it, and it's up in it's just north of here. I live in Sullivan County, but it's a couple counties north. And he was riding with his wife was on the back, and they were riding to their hunting stand, and they have a deer stand that's probably 3 or 4 miles up in the woods past their farm. And they had said they came over this knoll, and this thing stepped out from behind the tree, and and my friend this gentleman owns a lumber yard. He says the thing was as wide as a piece of a sheet of plywood. He said it kind of stepped out like a door closing. And he didn't see it, but his wife saw it. He was driving, and his wife kind of looked over his shoulder, and this thing kind of on the ridge to the right stepped out from behind this tree, and it was almost, she said it was almost 4 feet wide at the shoulders. And she grabbed on him and pulled on him and turned him around as they were driving. So he slowed down and he looked at it, and they literally turned around and went back home, and they have not hunted that land since.
It must have frightened them a bit. Yes.
They've been hunting that land. They've been hunting that land for 40 years, 40 years. And they did not go back to that. They have not been up on that crest since that day. She won't let them go up there. She says it was the most terrifying thing she ever saw. It was so wide that she couldn't believe what it was. She said it looked like it was a door closing between these two trees when it stepped out from behind there.
So that brings us back to this idea, that they're hiding behind trees. I mean, something that large, I think it would be very difficult to conceal itself behind a tree.
Well, if you think about this, though, and this is one of those things that if you really slow it down and look at it through a human lens, right? Our body, when you look at things in the woods and you walk in the woods, there's a lot of horizontal, or I'm sorry, a lot of vertical, right? The trees are all vertical. So by nature, you're used to seeing things on 4 legs, right? So you're used to seeing something horizontal, like a deer or a coyote or a bear, right? Something step out that goes against the grain of all the trees. So if something is standing still, right, and it's upright, and it's dark, and it doesn't move, chances are you're not going to see it, right? Your eyes are just not going to pick it up because you're just not. We're not looking for things like that. Our mind is not trained to look. If it moves, right? If it moves and it's large, you're going to see it. But if it stands still, you're used to seeing things. You want to see things on this side because you're used to seeing things on 4 legs because you're used to things in the woods being on 4 legs. So that's my theory on that.
This weekend I went to a conference, and there was some talk about how slow these things move. So they don't catch our attention because they move so slow. There was a thermal video of two different occasions, 2 different locations where there was a Bigfoot. The head was slightly above a grassy area, and it moved so slow downward until it was completely disappeared behind the grass. Those were both captured on a thermal, but the speed by which they move to not get attention. Have you heard of that before?
Well, that's similar to what our snipers do, right? Our snipers get into an area with a ghillie suit and they literally crawl along the floor. I haven't heard. I believe that they are smart enough and stealthy enough to do that because we're just not. Even a good outdoorsman is not trained to be looking for something bigger than him up on 2 feet walking around the woods, right? So you're looking for deer, you're looking for bear, you're looking for your game. And I don't think, and most people kind of, if you're talking about hikers and campers, they're not paying any attention, right? You could walk past. It was funny because I was talking to, when I was up in the Warren County, New York, I was talking to the gentleman for the search and rescue, and they've done exercises where they've put literally a person in a regular street clothes, or not street clothes, but not heavy camouflage. They put them literally 2 feet off the trail and stood there by themselves, and people walk by them all day. It's very easy. Human beings and their minds are not that keen in the outdoors. I just don't, even with your trained to hunt, I don't think they're very easy to miss. I mean, even at 400 or 500 pounds, right? Look at the color of them, right? They're blending in, and it's very easy. I mean, I think a lot of the dark, heavy, the longer hair, they would probably blend into a big tree, as far as the color goes. And I think the color is directly related to the areas that they live in, whether it's deep, dark, like sequoias, right? So you have the sequoia trees up in California. You hear more of the dark red, amber, dark brown Bigfoot. Here they're more of a black or a black brown. And I think that's to go with either the black, blend in with a black bear, to blend in with regular trees. I just don't think that we are in tune to pick things up as fast as we'd like, right? You'd like to be able to say, I'm going to sit here and I'll be able to spot the Bigfoot and no problem. I remember the very end of Harry and the Hendersons?
Yes.
when they're standing there and then all 4 of the other ones come out of nowhere and they were standing right in scene. So yeah, I think they're very easy to miss. And I think, like you said, I think we go back to, you have to just be extremely lucky to see one and to have one. But it's also understand, we were talking about why doesn't anybody get these things on camera? Why does it get things on camera? But when things happen quickly, like this, just for instance, I didn't have the camera up when the call in the Allegheny National Forest. I just didn't feel like recording at that time. So that I was prepared to record, right? And I still missed it. So if you got your phone in your pocket and you're in awe of the situation, I'm the worst proponent of this, because I'm like, I always say, I would have recorded it. I would have got it on film. To tell you what, I don't know about you, but every instance that I've heard about these sightings has been less than probably 3 or 4 seconds. And that's not very fast.
That is true. 3 or 4 seconds is difficult to adjust to. Suddenly you have to recognize that this is happening, and then to respond, to get a device out and get it on before it's ended is
exactly.
And also you're wanting to listen to or see whatever it is that's there, to take that in with your 5 senses. So you don't want to distract yourself by getting another device out.
Well, what's funny is Matt Pruitt from the North American Wood. So it was fun. He made a great point, and that's what's good about doing shows and interviewing people, because you run it. I love talking to somebody who's, and I'm not saying I'm smart, but I love talking to somebody who's smarter than me. Like, I like to learn things from, and I learn a lot because there's a lot of people smarter than me. But Matt made a good point. He said that, when you hear a lot of people say, well, when the creature stepped out, the woods went silent, right? You hear that the woods went completely silent. Well, he made a good point that, let's say I'm walking over a hill and I'm just kind of walking, I'm hunting, and then I see this thing. You get tunnel vision, right? Every sense locks on that thing. So all my attention is on whatever's in front of me. So it's not that the woods is going silent. It's just that I'm focusing solely on what's in front of me. And a lot of people will give it a more creepy feeling than it actually is. I think it's like you said, it's like you're so enamored with what's going on, or you would be, because I haven't physically seen one. But I think your body your senses are overwhelmed because you're seeing something that shouldn't be there by the law of nature.
Yeah, you don't quickly process that in your mind, so you're dealing with that as well as trying to figure out, what's what. I mean, you'd have to probably be very seasoned at that quick and ready filming and recording portion of it.
You'd have to be jaded, right? So this had to have happened to you more than once, right? So that you'd have to have had several sightings where you expect it. And
exactly.
To me, that's pushing it a bit. I think when you hear those stories, it's, unfortunately, people don't always tell the truth. so, so you have, for whatever reason, some people need to feel like they've had sighting, more than one sightings, or they're habituating. And I don't know about the habituation thing. I find that hard to believe. That's just me personally, right? I don't want to cast a doubt on things, but I think, like you said, I think you'd have to be very almost expecting it to happen for you to actually capture it on film, or have your gear on rolling and it just captured. I think I've heard a lot of people that they'll put the GoPros on their back and they'll record them, or they'll have them on their dog. There's a lot of videos of the video of the GoPros on the dogs, and then the creature walks across them and they capture it on film. So I think you have to have your gear going to capture a decent footage, and then it's shaky at best, and it's easily dissectable by people that just don't want to believe.
That's true. Have you studied any of the Native American talk about, Bigfoot? Because there's, in all the legends, they have the talk of, the big hairy man or the stone man. There's many things they call them. But have you had any encounters with a discussion with anyone who knows something about that?
Well, my favorite is the Dark Watchers tale from Southern California, and that's more along the lines of Native. I don't know if it's fully Native American, but it's also kind of the early colonial, the Spanish days, where they had, they've got they had these creatures, and they gave them supernatural tendencies because they kind of were there and then they weren't. But the Dark Watchers were these giant creatures that if you were walking along the mountains up in Southern California back in the day, and it was very rough terrain, you would see these creatures up on the hill. And then as long as you didn't pay attention to them, right, you kept them in your periphery, they would stay there. But if you turned to kind of get a better look at them, they'd be gone in a flash. There's also the Satanga legend out in I believe it's in Oklahoma, and that's the Outcast Paranormal films. They've had the last couple. I haven't spoken to anybody directly about it, but I do study a lot of different cultures, a lot of different stories, right? A lot of different anecdotes and stuff like that. And the Outcast Paranormal they've done a couple films on that with the Native American lore. I think it's out in Oklahoma, where they study that. And I believe, I tell you what, they've been here for a long time, right? The Native Americans have been here for a very, very long time. And I think they probably had a lot more interactions than we're having now because there was less of them as far as people. There was less urban centers, right? There wasn't a whole lot of big cities, and there wasn't a lot of as many. The Indians, I think, are more in tune with the Native Americans, I shouldn't say Native Americans are more in tune with their environment, and I think it's a fascinating tale. I do. I think it's one that you have to keep in perspective of just a little bit because, I don't know if Thunderbirds exist, but they spoke highly of the Thunderbirds.
Well, again, I think we have to go back to what we become aware of. If these things might exist all around us and we just have no concept of them, therefore we don't acknowledge them, we don't process in our brain, we have no frame of reference to them. Bigfoot's become kind of a cliquish subject. There is a lot out there now on YouTube, on TV. It's become a subject that people are not embarrassed to talk about. So
I agree with you. I am currently subscribed I'm not going to kid you, to 387 YouTube channels, right, on the Bigfoot subject, because I go through a lot of stuff, and yours, of course, is one of mine. It's one of my favorite shows. But yeah, it's not as even though people will still give people a hard time, like my friends will still send me every single picture of a Bigfoot bumper sticker or a Bigfoot at a gas station, right? My friends that don't follow the Bigfoot thing, right? They'll still give me a little bit of that zing. But if you ask them personally, they really find it fascinating. I think, there's look at how many conferences there are, right? There are hundreds of conferences a year. There used to be just a handful back in the day. So it's becoming less and less, but it's also becoming a big money business with all these merchandisers and people making crafts and people making Bigfoot t-shirts and all this stuff. So not only is it a big business, it's fascinating. And I think the worst thing that could possibly happen to this whole thing, Linda, is that it was proved to be that somebody would pull out of the woods a body. I think that would be the worst thing to ever happen to this community.
I think I agree, because the mystery would be gone. And once you take the mystery out of it, there's no longer a search. And it's the search that creates the adventure of the whole phenomenon.
Exactly. I equated it to like if like it would be if they proved it to be if they proved it without a shadow of a doubt. Like let's say science recognizes it with a body. It would be like having a convention about panda bears, right? It's the same thing. The panda bears were a myth for years and years and years and years and years in China, and they were finally proved to be real. So if it is, it's the allure of the unknown and the I'm right or you could be right or they could be right. We don't know who's right. We just all want this journey to continue.
Well,
And I
that's
think
true.
it's fascinating. I completely think it's fascinating because every time I speak to somebody and I get so frustrated because I feel like they're not telling me the truth, the next day I talk to somebody who's telling me a story that I cannot get enough of. So it's like every time you think you had enough of it because you're a show host, I know you feel that every once in a while, you have to because you're human. You speak to somebody and you hear a story and you go, wow, that was fascinating. I believe that 100%. And that's what keeps me coming back.
Draws you right back in.
Oh, God, it does.
Yeah, the same thing's true of so many things, the ghost phenomena, there's the UFO phenomena, all of these things that we don't have such concrete evidence of, but there's something about our human nature that just we like a good mystery.
Well, the clock is ticking on the UFO one. We all know that. It's just a matter of time because it's getting every time you turn around. Now NASA is officially involved. I don't know. It took literally an act of Congress to get NASA involved in looking for UFOs. You would think that would be one of the main things they would be interested in, right? Now they finally released their report that says they're going to get a smartphone app for people, for the public to report UFOs to NASA. They're going to take an active role in looking at these UFOs. So I think the UFO thing is clicking, but I think what's important about that is that's going to be directly related to this Bigfoot thing, whether people want to admit it or not. There's going to be something somewhere that the two click.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more to it, and we don't know where it's all going, but I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more information that will tell us more about how we participate in that whole process as well. I don't know that we can be absent from our own experiences.
Right, and it's weird because I'm sure you followed the congressional hearings on the UAPs. And it's the industrial machine, right? The industrial military machine in the United States is a scary, creepy, dark force that runs this country, like this shadow government that's up there. And so they're blocking these meetings and trying to prevent these people from having a secure skiff to talk about their process. And there's forces at work that are trying to prevent us from hearing the truth about whether it's the UAPs or Bigfoot. I do believe that it's a great time to be alive right now because not only, yes, we have problems with our identity as a nation, and we will hopefully outgrow that. But I do believe that now there are things coming into play that people like poor John Green, Peter Byrne, Grover Krantz, all these guys that were real hardcore men in the woods. These people went in the woods every day. They didn't have the internet, right? They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have video cameras. These guys they put in the yeoman's work for this foundation, for this community, and hopefully, either my generation or the generation after it will eventually bear that fruit because of what's going on with this whole disclosure thing through the UAP thing. I really think that's going to be connected, and I look forward to the day we might not figure out exactly what they are, but we're going to know a hell of a lot more than we know now.
Absolutely. And I commend everyone who's willing to come on board and tell their story because it all adds up to a bigger picture and have the courage to just own what happened to them and share that. So, and I appreciate you coming on today and sharing all of this too. Sounds like we're a lot in the same place. We're all looking, searching, trying to find answers and enjoying the adventure of it along the way.
Yeah, it is. It is. Like I said, I started this not too long ago by standards. And I tell you what, the journey is all the fun. It really is. The journey is so much fun now. Now it's just, it's fascinating. I run into fascinating people when I go to the conferences and I talk to people and I hear stories and I get out in the woods as much as I humanly possibly can. And I really, now that we've grown up, right? Like we've had a couple guys in the group that everything was Bigfoot, right? Every noise was Bigfoot. Every this was Bigfoot. So now our group has grown up a little bit and we're a little bit more discerning about our evidence, but the evidence is going to come and it's whether we get it or somebody else gets it. I look forward to hearing about it. And I look forward to I don't know. I have a lot of fun doing it, Linda.
That's fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and end our meeting
Okay.
today. And thank you
Yeah.
so much for being one of the encouraging people out there helping us all to figure things out.
Anytime. I just want to do a shameless plug. Can I?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to let everybody know that I host This Week in Bigfoot. It's every Friday night at 8:15 on the CARC Universal channel. It's a weekly newscast on Bigfoot research, evidence findings, podcasts, live streams, everything you want to know about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the wild man. We pack it into a half-hour show. No commercials, all Bigfoot. So if you guys get a chance to watch it, I'd appreciate it.